Good afternoon. Hope everyone's doing great. We are over halfway through the course. You guys did a good job on your midterm and other assignments. Um, and I'm going to record some sessions for chapters 8, 9, and 10. Chapter 8 is about using marketing channels. Chapter 9 is about supply chain management. And chapter 10 is about marketing research. And before we get started, also, just to let you guys know, this all ends rather quickly. Probably want to get going some on your marketing plan as well. So go ahead and check your syllabus out for that. But essentially, that's why we did the marketing plan chapter in the first week, because I wanted you to be thinking about that, and we'll try and wrap some things together on how maybe to market a new product. So I might add some notes to send to you on that, but it should be kind of a fun little project to do. In the real world, of course, you would spend months and maybe years on a marketing plan, but we don't have the luxury of doing that. But I want to give you some experience about thinking about all the different components of it. Okay, well, let's dig into chapter 8. So, using marketing channels to create customer value. So, of the 4 P's that we've talked about, product, price, placement, promotion, this is the placement and distribution of products. And so, a lot of times in marketing, people don't think that this is a really big deal, but honestly, it's a huge deal. If we don't get things in the right places for people to buy, then they just won't buy them. And when you look at cost of a product, sometimes the total cost of the product is maybe 30 to 40% of it is in distribution or placement. So there are some tremendous opportunities to do some cost savings. If I were to tell you, hey, it cost me $10 to make this part, and I can get the production processes down to $8 and save $2, everyone would be really excited, right? Well, there are opportunities in the distribution and placement of products too. If it used to cost me $17 to distribute and ship a product to before it got into the consumer's hands, and I could cut that cost from 17 down to 14, that $3 difference is just the same as if I were to make a product, $3 less expensive because I received different materials or something like that. So anyway, it's a really important part of marketing, and obviously that's why we spend a chapter talking about it. Okay, so work on some terminology through this too. When we talk about marketing channel members, basically these are our partners. And so we work together to make this whole thing happen. And sometimes they're called middlemen, sometimes they're called intermediaries, sometimes they're called channel members. It's called all one and the same, but those are some of the different terms that you'll hear. And the reason why we don't do everything ourselves is because there are different levels of specialization and expertise that we can all achieve if we partner with each other. So if you think about, even in this country, what led to the rise of the United States economically within 200 years of its existence to where it was the #1 superpower in the world in terms of trade and commerce? We focused a lot on specialization. Even going back into the Industrial Revolution, the cotton gin and mass production, all of those things contributed to us being able to accelerate our production and producing things more efficiently. Before that, you did everything. You made your product, you sold your product, you marketed your product, you did all that. Well, now the systems are really intricate, and there's a pretty good chance that you might just specialize in something. Maybe you just paint the part, or you just make something and then you pass it on. So we have assembly line production and factories that specialize in things. And if you look at a lot of companies out there today, They work with other channel members to get their product out there. And some of this will become clearer as we talk through the chapter. So let's talk about what some of the channel partners are, who they are. Okay, you may have heard of these terms. Maybe you do or don't know what they mean, but let's talk about them a little bit. So a major partner is the wholesaler, right? So this is a entity which helps you get your product distributed along the way to your final customer. So if we start with a manufacturer, say somebody that produces the product, let's just pick Ford Motor Company. They are a manufacturer. But think about how it works with Ford. They don't produce a car off of the assembly line and then call you up and say, hey, you want to spend $25,000 and come buy this car? Absolutely not. They focus on making cars. So what do they do when they're done with the cars? Well, actually, they ship them off to their dealers. And actually, a dealer isn't really necessarily a wholesaler. So maybe this was kind of a bad example. A dealer, we actually kind of bypass a wholesaler in this situation. The dealer is more the retailer, which is another one I'll get to in just a second. But in the chain, your marketing channel members, what wholesalers do is they take the product from the manufacturer, and then they basically then will give it to a retailer, who then in turn sells it to us as consumers. Okay, so a better example would be, let's talk about Kraft Foods. Okay, so Kraft would be the manufacturer. They would make up your boxes of macaroni and cheese. And then what's going to happen is once they produce all of the macaroni and cheese, they're going to sell it off to a wholesaler. And this could be, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but it might be ABC wholesalers. And so these guys take possession of all the mac and cheese, and maybe they take, truckloads and big pallets of it. And then they will take the macaroni and cheese. They'll break it down from these big boxes of, maybe 10,000 boxes in a big box that was shipped to them. And they might break it apart into smaller sections. And then they'll work with the different grocery stores, the Super Walmart, the Super Target, Hy-Vee, Kroger, and all these places. And then they will package and bundle them and then send them out to the retailers, which would be your grocery stores. So there's the other major channel member. You've got a wholesaler and you got a retailer. The retailers basically sell to the individuals. So these are the stores that you and I go to and we buy the stuff. Now, Kraft does not want to deal directly with us. And Kraft also doesn't really necessarily want to deal just with the grocery stores because, again, it takes time, it takes expertise, and it takes resources. And so that's why your traditional chain is, the manufacturer goes to a wholesaler who breaks it down, goes to a retailer who deals with the consumer. And we all have our specialties that we concentrate on. Going back to the car dealership, where we sort of, I guess, in a way, cut out the wholesaler, Ford does not want to sell you or I a car, but they're happy to ship out 500 cars to your local dealership, and then the local dealership will see the customers, negotiate price, and things like that. So it kind of comes back to everybody specializes in something that they sort of want to do. And the producers or the manufacturers really don't want to hassle with individual orders. They're busy producing the product and they just sort of want to get it off their plate. And somebody else will come in and take on that role. Or, if you think about like an insurance company, insurance companies provide the insurance, but they don't necessarily want to sell individual policies to people. So then they, work with agents who will go ahead and do that. You'll buy your insurance from an agent, but they're not really giving the insurance. I mean, they're just representing the company, and then they'll, sell you the policy and collect the premium and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So I guess those are two of the major players. Your text talks about different types of wholesalers. I'm not going to go through them all, but I will say that, a couple of terms that you should know. One, so a merchant wholesaler. That's a wholesaler who will take possession of the goods from the manufacturer. And why that's significant is because let's say the wholesaler can't sell the product, then they're still on the hook. Once the manufacturer releases it, they get paid, and then they don't have to worry about whether the product gets sold. So they're able to pass on the risk to the wholesaler. The wholesaler takes on the risk because that's part of doing the business, right? So they don't have to make the goods, they get it from the manufacturer. They might break it down into smaller orders. They have relationships with all these retailers. They do some of the selling and the marketing and all that, and then they'll collect a fee. So as you go through the chain, you're always going to be getting an increase in price. And that's because everyone along the way has to make some money and they're providing some value. So, if you will, a box of macaroni and cheese, maybe the manufacturer sells it to a wholesaler for $1 a box. And then the wholesaler will turn around and sell it to the retailer for $1.50 a box. And then the retailer will turn around and sell it to you and I for $2.50 a box. And you might, there's a term that they talk about called disintermediation. And if you've not heard of that term, you've probably heard of the more common term, which is cut out the middleman. So you might think, well, why would I want to pay $2.50 at a grocery store when I could just go to Kraft and buy the box for $1? Kraft does not want to deal with you. And Kraft, if they're located up in Michigan, do you want to drive 2 states away to get your mac and cheese? I don't think so. So the retailers are, they have the relationships with the customers. They do a lot of the selling, the servicing, putting it in convenient locations and things like that. And it's worth it to you and I to be able to go to our grocery store, which is a mile away, versus driving 2 states away to a producer, a manufacturer, or even an hour away to get to a wholesaler. So, we kind of like to think that perhaps we don't want to deal with the middlemen, but okay, sorry. I thought I had started my recording, but I noticed I hadn't. So picking up where I think I had left off, we were talking a little bit about the wholesalers and the retailers. Your text talks about different types of wholesalers, um, rack jobbers. Those are people that they'll restock a display of candy or magazines or something like that in stores. You have drop shippers. You have um, let's see, with cash and carry and some of the others. The book explains it probably just as well as I can. Let me know if you have any questions on that. But there are different types of wholesalers out there. And then you have your retailers. Okay, so these are the stores that you and I go to, which are probably convenient, close to our house, and it's easy for us to get it. And those are the people that we interact directly with. They have product knowledge, they can handle returns and things like that. Different types of retailers, a convenience store, a department store, of course, your grocery store, your big box stores, your outlet stores, your off-price stores, like a Gordman's or something like that. And so each of these types of places serves a different purpose. Online stores. Some provide you a less service, but a better price, and those kind of things. So we have all these different entities out there that we're dealing with. Now, when we look at the typical marketing chain, the typical marketing channel would be a manufacturer to a wholesaler to a retailer to a consumer. There's 4. But there are a lot of different ones. We can go manufacturer could deal directly with the consumer. That does happen sometimes. And especially when we do online, you can order directly from the company. Sometimes we do the manufacturer straight to the retailer and we bypass the wholesaler and then the consumer. So in a lot of ways, Walmart, they have quite an intricate system. They really don't use a lot of wholesalers. They use some, but they are powerful enough and sophisticated enough where they can work directly with the manufacturer and then they really act as a retailer. And then sometimes you might get multiple wholesalers involved or multiple retailers involved. So the chains can be long or they can be short. You have a bunch of different options on there. Okay, so the book also talks a little bit about this applies to B2B sales as well, whereas in B2B, we don't really talk about wholesalers as much. We talk more about like distributors. Um, and the typical chain would be a manufacturer to a distributor to a company, but it could be manufacturer straight to a company as well. Okay, so quite often what you'll see is where companies will sell through multiple channels. So, for example, let's take a look at Apple selling their laptops. Okay. So, one channel that Apple does is you can buy directly from the company, right? If you go on to apple.com, you could order a MacBook or an iPhone or whatever, and the company would ship it straight to you. Okay. Another way you could buy an Apple is you could go to an Apple owned store, right? If you're in a big city and you could buy the products there. Or you can buy Apple products through Best Buy and other computer stores. So there's several different ways that you can get these Apple products. And it makes sense because some people know what they want. They just want to order it online and get it from the company. Great. Other people want to go to a Best Buy, talk to a salesperson, figure out, what product is going to fit them best. So you want to have those outlets there for people as well. So that's why we do multiple offerings. Now, the one thing you have to be cognizant of and careful of is if you're a manufacturer, when you set up multiple ways for people to buy your product, you got to make sure that you don't set off your channel members who might get bent out of shape because you're basically setting up competition for them. So, for example, if I'm Apple and I go to all the Best Buy stores and say, hey, I'd like to sell my product through your store, and I want shelf space, and I want you to store the product, I want you to work with the consumers and all this kind of stuff, and that would be great. And Best Buy is like, well, that sounds great. Well, now, but people don't have to go to Best Buy, and they can buy directly from the company. Well, Best Buy is going to be like, what's going on here? Here, I'm committing shelf space and salesperson expertise to sell your products, and now you're selling them out from under me at a lower price. That's going to cut my legs out for me, and that's not fair, and I don't really like it. So you've got to manage those kind of relationships because as Apple, you really do want your Best Buy people because some people go to Best Buy. They want a person to talk to face, or maybe even demonstrate how the product works. And so you want to keep multiple types of customers happy, but you also need to keep your business partners happy. And so there's no perfect answer on this, but you just have to be, you can't ignore it and say, oh, well, my retailers and my wholesalers won't care if I sell on my own as well. Well, they probably will. And you need to be upfront, open about it, and talk to them about why you're doing it. And, maybe they get a little bit higher commission on the products that they sell because you're also selling those. So that's just something you need to be aware of. We talk about conflict within the channels. That's part of why that comes about. Okay, so I touched on this earlier. I just want to review benefits of the middleman. Okay, first of all, they're a clearinghouse. So going way back to my example about you buying a car, well, maybe I didn't use that example, but who wants to go up to Detroit to get their car? Nobody, right? You want to go across town, 15-minute drive to go to the dealership to get your car. So, and it really would be very inefficient for 10,000 people in Davenport to drive up to Detroit to buy a car. It makes more sense to set up a dealership in the Quad Cities so the people here can go to the dealership, right? And so not just the Quad Cities, but look at all the cities around the country and around the world. That's why Ford has so many dealerships set up, because you kind of take it to the people. Or think about a grocery store. When you go to the store, you buy everything, right? You buy sugar, you buy milk, you buy flour, you buy pizza, you buy everything else. Isn't it nice to go to a store and pick up 50 different items versus if you had to go to 50 different manufacturers? It'd drive you crazy. So we actually like it that there are wholesalers and retailers and places that we can go to, because it makes it a lot easier for us on our lives. And then, of course, it makes it easier on the lives of the manufacturers too. Um, the wholesalers, the retailers, they will break down the big packages. They will attractively display it. They will do the selling. They have relationships with the customers. So there's so many things that they do. They might do after sales service. They might carry extra parts, and they might actually install and fix things for you. So there's a lot of things that these channel members do that really provide value to the process. Even just carrying inventory. So Ford, makes the car, gets it off the assembly line. They don't have to keep it. They send it out to the dealerships. And a lot of times a car might be sitting at a dealership for 6 to 12 months. Well, they're willing to carry those costs. And, transporting the goods from the manufacturer to the place where the consumer is. And that kind of thing. So take on a lot of roles, take on a lot of risk, things like that. When we talk about distribution internationally, well, a whole other ball of wax there. We offer an entire course on international marketing, but just real quick, different ways that we can distribute products internationally. We can export them. We could set up joint ventures and have other partners. We could produce offshore, lots of things there. So we'll kind of skip over that, but hate to skip over anything globally since that's such a big part of our world, but those issues apply as well. Okay, so getting to the end of the chapter, a couple more terms talking about the different types of distribution. We have intensive distribution, selective distribution, and exclusive distribution. Intensive means that you can find the product everywhere. So that's like a can of soda. You can find a can of soda in a grocery store, a convenience store, lots of different places. Those convenience products we talked about in one of the previous chapters, those are usually sold intensively, where you want to be able to get this product in a lot of places. A selective distribution is you can buy it in more than one place, but not everywhere. And so those kind of fall in line with like the shopping goods, where maybe it's clothing. Okay, you're probably going to go to an apparel store. Now there's a lot of different ones, but you're not going to be able to find a jacket in a convenience store usually, right? And then exclusive distribution, this is where there's only one or a few places you can go to get this product. Generally, it's a more expensive product, a more specialized product, and it's worth it to you to go out of your way to this location to get it. So the key is you have to make sure that the product or service that you're selling matches up with the distribution model that customers are willing to put up with. So I'm not going to drive 4 hours to buy a loaf of bread. At the same time, it wouldn't make sense to sell, Gucci bags in 100 different stores in a community. That's a specialty item. You're willing to go somewhere to get that. And so it'd probably be pretty inefficient, and it might even actually decrease the perceived value if the product is sold just about everywhere. The term of channel power comes up. So where does the power lie? That's important to understand. Who has more influence? Is it the manufacturer? Is it the wholesaler? Is it the retailer? It varies, but it's important to understand who has the power there, because they can probably negotiate better terms and better deals. So your text does talk about it, but one of the more